Okay, want to call to order and take attendance?
Sure. I'll do the roll call. Abington.
John Stone.
Bruce Hughes.
Thanks, guys. Avon. Bridgewater.
Shane O'Brien, Town Planner.
Thanks, Shane. Brockton.
John Fay, City Planner.
Thank you. Duxbury. East Bridgewater. Easton.
Dave Fields here. Greg
Thank
Farr.
you. Thank you. Halifax. Hanover. Hanson.
Don Howard from Hanson.
Thank you, Don.
Amos
Kingston.
Shave, Highway Director.
Thank you. Kingston. Pembroke.
We don't have a JTC member, but I'm here as a delegate, Becky Coletta from, as the OCPC delegate.
Thank you, Becky. Plymouth.
James Downey from Plymouth.
Thanks, James. Plimpton. Stoughton. West Bridgewater. And finally, Whitman.
Here, Dan Salvucci.
Here, present.
And then Brockton Area Transit.
Michael Lambert and Glenn Geiler are here.
Thank you. And MassDOT, District 5.
Hi, everybody. Barbara LaChance from District 5.
Thank you, Barbara. And then finally, MassDOT Boston. I believe Raisa is on the line.
Hi, everyone. This is Raisa. I'm also here with the manager, Derek Cravat.
Thank you.
All set, Bill?
Yeah, we're good to go.
All right. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. The notice of non-discrimination rights and protections to beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI/non-discrimination protections and state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 for more information. And thank you all and welcome. I'm going to move on to item 2, which is public comments. Do I have any public comments at this time? All right, I'm going to move on to item number 3, which is minutes of the December 1st meeting, 2022.
I'll motion Dan Salvucci, Whitman.
Do I
Second,
have
Hanson.
a second? Have a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Item 5, which is under reports, Brockton Area Regional Transportation Authority. Do we have Mike or Glenn today?
Thank you, Chair. We have 3 different updates today. First is a couple days ago, we wrapped up our free fare program, which lasted from Thanksgiving until New Year's. Ridership ticked up a little bit in accordance with that program. So that it went well. I think it met its goals and we're happy to have provided it. 2, we are underway with our soft launch of our Rockland micro transit service. And for those of you who don't know, that's sort of a Uber and Lyft service, but run by a public authority so that the pricing remains consistent just as a normal bus or paratransit service. So we'll be ready to give that a full launch and press release by the end of January. And 3rd, we were happy to host all our friends from OCPC on a bus riding scavenger hunt a couple weeks ago, and that was a great time. We encourage any members of the JTC to come by and visit us at any time to get a tour and take a trip around town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much. Moving on to item B, which is the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Transit Authority, GATRA, and that would be Mary Ellen.
Noreen, we actually skipped item 4, communications. Could we possibly go back to that?
Oh, I am so sorry. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go back to item 4. Sorry about that, Sean.
That's okay.
Communications.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a handful of items for the communications packet for this month. The first item is Vision 2050, the future of transportation, a public survey that is available. The long-range transportation plan that is currently being undergone by the Old Colony MPO. It is the policy and visioning document of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. The survey is available at the following link. Please help guide us in the development of this plan by taking this survey of your priorities for transportation in our region. And here is a flyer that we have released for our survey. You can use the QR code, you can click on the link, whichever is easiest for you. The next item is the 2023 Massachusetts Freight Plan. MassDOT launched the development of this plan process with a planning horizon of 2050. This freight plan will set a comprehensive vision and goals for the multimodal freight network in Massachusetts. The first Freight Advisory Committee meeting has been scheduled for Tuesday, January 10th at 11 p.m. MassDOT will also hold a public information meeting on Thursday, January 12th at 6 p.m. These meetings will be held virtually and are open to the public. And for more information, you can click on the hyperlinks in the staff report. The next item is the Culvert Grant Program, now accepting project inquiries. The Division of Ecological Restoration, Massachusetts Department of Fish and Game seeks proposals from municipalities in Massachusetts interested in replacing undersized, perched, and/or degraded culverts located in areas of high ecological value. In general, individual awards have ranged from $25,000 to $400,000, depending on the project phases as well as the work required. Potential applicants are encouraged to click the email address to set up a pre-RFR project inquiry call. And the calendar, they are now accepting the inquiries through Wednesday, February 1st. The grant materials will be available on the division's website mid-January. Then the pre-RFR grant briefing presentation will be held Monday, January 30th at 1 p.m. and the application deadline is anticipated to be the middle of March of this year. And I'm seeing in the chat that the freight meeting is actually at 11 a.m., not 11 p.m. My apologies. Moving on to the next item, a no-cost equipment from MassDOT, speed feedback and school zone speed limit signs. With there being an uptick in speeding and speeding-related fatalities and serious injuries on Massachusetts roadways, dynamic speed feedback signs have been shown to reduce speeds by an average of 4 miles an hour. Additionally, the Massachusetts amendments to the MUTCD have been updated to include grades 9 through 12. Previously, only grades K through 8 were covered based on the federal Safe Routes to School guidance. And there is a training that will be provided by MassDOT and the equipment vendor. Applications are due January 16th. Initially, approximately 50 municipalities will be selected to receive this equipment based on a combination of crashes, risks, environment, context, and need. And the application is available at the hyperlink in the staff report. And that is communications.
Any questions? Thank you, Sean. Now I'll go back to 5B, which would be GATRA, and that would be Mary Ellen.
I do not see her on the attendees list. Is
Okay.
anybody here from GATRA that has an update?
Okay, well, maybe she'll come in later. We'll go back to it. Item C, which is the South Coast Rail, Sean, that would be you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As we all know, South Coast Rail is going to be restoring commuter rail service between Boston and southeastern Massachusetts by the end of, now we can say this year. Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford are the only major cities within 50 miles of Boston that do not currently have commuter rail service to Boston. Phase 1 will provide a 1-seat ride by extending the existing Middleborough-Lakeville commuter rail line from Boston to Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford. In the month of December, some of the work that was conducted involved fencing installation in 8 communities on the Fall River and Middleborough secondary lines, as well as the New Bedford main line. Shoulder and lane closure on Route 140 South in Taunton for curb and sidewalk installation. Daytime track work in Berkeley, overnight railroad signal house testing in Middleborough, and the reversal of Forge Road's one-way direction in Assonet. If anybody is interested in signing up for the weekly updates on this project, you can click on the hyperlink in the staff report, enter your contact information, and enter your email address to receive those updates.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions for Sean on South Coast Rail? All right, hearing none, I will move forward to item 6, which is old business, which is the FY 2023 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program implementation. That would be Bill, and we'll have the FFY 2023 to 2027 tip adjustment 1.
Yep. So that's my primary update for the tip. So at their last meeting on December 19th, the MPO endorsed Amendment 1, which is to adjust the cost for Brockton area transit, Bat Terminal, intermodal project. So Sean, if you want to fast forward, let's jump to go through the slides. It'll be the last slide, and so. So this graphic here shows what the amendment was. I'm sorry, the adjustment was. It's an adjustment. The cost threshold is below the cost change is below the threshold that would require an amendment. So this was just an adjustment. Adjustments do not require a public review and comment period. So the total cost of the project changed from 100,000 to 127,000. Originally it was 80,000 federal funding and 20,000 RTA cap state funding. So to accommodate the change, the federal funding stayed the same, but the RTA cap funding was increased from 20,000 and 27 to 47,000. So that covers the cost increase. This adjustment was necessary to accelerate this project for BAT, and so the MPO did endorse this on December 17th. So no action or is necessarily needed by the JTC today. This is just for informational purposes. There may be, there will be an amendment to the tip to program in community transit grants grant awards, which were recently awarded to several projects in our region for OCPC, Brockton Area Transit, and the Bridgewater Council on Aging, as well as Social Community Action Council. That MassDOT is still working on that, so it's up in the air right now if that's going to if the amendment will be ready for this coming MPO meeting, not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. It we'll watch it, and so it's on the agenda for now. But if it so just bear that in mind, and that's just a program. Like I said, programming those 5310 projects. So that's my update for right now. There were no other substantial project changes in the highway tip.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill at this time?
Do see a hand raised.
Hi, I just wanted to
add something if I may, Madam Chair? I want to thank Bill for introducing our tip adjustment here. Like he said, this is a increase in our RTA cap budget in order to accelerate the expansion of our bus stop project at Market Basket here at the Westgate Mall in Brockton. And as he mentioned, the adjustment is for excuse me, an increase in 100% state funds. And we'd also like to thank MassDOT for their support of our community transit grant program application. BAT's the recipient of a grant award to continue our Lifeline service in the town of Rockland. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions or comments to add at this time? Hearing none, I will move forward to item number 7, which is new business, the Old Colony MPO performance management targets. And we'll be talking about the PM1 safety performance, PM2 pavement and bridge performance management, and the PM3, which is system performance. Bill?
Yep. So I'll start this off and then I'll hand it over to Raisa. So
Okay.
so I think everyone on this meeting is familiar, but if not, so each MPO is each year is required to set performance management targets. And those are in these 3 categories. So safety performance, which is reduce fatalities and overall number of serious injuries on the highway network. Pavement and bridge performance, which is to keep the physical infrastructure in a certain percentage state of good repair, and those facilities that are in poor condition, keeping the percentage of those facilities under a certain percentage, and then system reliability and performance, which is looking at congestion and freight movement and stuff like that on the network. So it's really about system performance and predictability. So those are the 3 target areas. So I'll briefly talk about PM1 safety performance, and then I believe Race is going to talk about the PM3. So these are set to be presented to the MPO in full at our next meeting, which is like a week from Tuesday. So I encourage you all to attend that meeting. But if you want to go to the next slide. So this slide shows, so this is the data that goes into PM1. This shows the trend in fatalities and injuries on the network. So I think I've presented on it before a couple times to this committee, and I think just in general, most people are familiar with it. So in 2020, with COVID and the pandemic, we started to see a increase in fatalities and serious injuries on the highway network. This was reversed a trend where for a while it'd been decreasing. So there was a slight increase in these, and the way the performance targets are set up, it's based on a 5-year average. So the challenge that we, not just this MPO, but everyone in the state and really everyone in the country ran into is how to set those targets. We certainly don't want to show we certainly don't want to set a goal for an increased number of fatalities and injuries, and so basically, so what everyone did was we looked at the trends, and so the trend overall continues to go down. If you kind of look past these last 2 years, we don't have the 2022 data yet, not in full anyways. So we're looking at 2020 and 2021. considering that's probably just a blip, and that, everything that, the MPOs are doing, everything that MassDOT's doing, everything that US DOT is doing, is expected to continue to yield positive results in safety performance. Not just that, just safer vehicles in general, vehicle technology. So if you want to want to go to the next slide, Sean. So this is just a write up on the on what the draft PM1 targets are, and just I won't read through it. Still kind of in draft form until the MPO endorses it, but just want to kind of go through the next few slides of this document. So you can see the state is adopting a target of a slight decrease in fatalities and injuries for 2023, and this is for vehicular crashes as well as pedestrian and bicycle crashes. So I go to the next one. You can see again, that slight projected for slight decrease. Next one. Again, slight decrease. And so that's PM1. That's what's expected to be presented to the MPO at their next meeting, and hopefully endorsed. Each MPO has the option of developing their own targets or adopting the statewide targets. And we have always, like most MPOs, we have always adopted the statewide targets. That's, we have a good partnership with the state, and it's really the best approach. So that's where we're heading, and hopefully we have these accepted and adopted on at the next MPO meeting. So with that, I'll let MassDOT talk about PM3.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raisa Kwame from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning. And with Dirk Cravat today, I'll be presenting on the system performance measures all state DOTs and MPOs are required to develop and endorse per federal regulations. Since we have presented on federal performance measures for the past few years, many of you are probably familiar with the process. As a refresher, the federal performance measures regulations passed in 2016 include 3 overarching categories. PM1 represents safety, PM2, pavement and bridge condition, and PM3, which this presentation focuses on, which is a catch-all category called system performance measures that includes improving the transportation system's efficiency and reducing congestion. The specific measures included under PM3 are reliability, congestion, and emission reduction. Reliability includes travel time reliability on both the interstate highway system and non-interstate roads, as well as truck travel time reliability to evaluate the efficiency of freight movement. Congestion includes 2 measures, non-SOB travel and peak hour excessive delay within the whole urbanized area. Emissions reductions is a measure that captures reducing emissions specifically from CMAQ-funded projects. The first measure I'll be presenting is a level of travel time reliability, which refers to the percentage of miles on roadways that are considered reliable. It's important to note that reliability in this context does not necessarily mean uncongested. It is more a measure related to the predictability of travel time. So if a roadway is consistently congested, it would be considered reliable under this measure. Whereas if a roadway is perfectly clear one day and highly congested the next, leading to unpredictable travel times, it would be considered unreliable for this purpose. With regard to the reporting timeline, MassDOT submitted statewide reliability targets to the Federal Highway Administration on December 16, 2022, and all MPOs are required to either adopt these targets or establish their own within 6 months of this date. We are asking for the MPO board to review these targets now so that the updated targets can be endorsed and included within the Regional Transportation Improvement Program and Regional Transportation Plan, both of which need to be endorsed over the next few months. This slide has more detail on how to calculate the level of travel time reliability. I won't go over this in too much depth, but the process involves measuring different travel time percentiles on different roadway segments at different times of day, comparing these travel times to see how much variation there is, and then aggregating the percentage of roadway miles considered reliable based on these calculations. Since the measure is reported as a percentage of all roadway miles considered reliable statewide, we consider an increased percentage moving in the right direction for this measure. The next measure in the reliability category is truck travel time reliability, which measures the amount of time it takes for trucks to drive the length of a road segment. The reporting timeline is the same for this one. MassDOT submitted its targets on December 16th. TTTR is calculated in a somewhat similar way to the level of travel time reliability, but is reported as an index instead of a percentage. Different percentiles of travel times within a segment are compared to assess how much variation there is, and the index is developed. Travel time reliability is reported at both the interstate and non-interstate level. The data for interstates is shown on this slide. The first year we started to collect data on this measure was in 2017, and as you can see, the trend between 2017 and 2019 was heading in the wrong direction, with roadways becoming less reliable during that period. In 2020, as a result of significantly fewer vehicles on the road, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, travel time reliability shot up to 94.4% that year. In 2021, reliability went down slightly, but remained much higher than pre-pandemic levels. Since these were very atypical years with extenuating circumstances, they were disregarded for the purpose of target setting. Instead, MassDOT chose to develop 2- and 4-year targets that represented improved reliability over pre-pandemic levels while accounting for external factors such as continued work from home trends and other MassDOT initiatives that aim to improve travel time reliability. The 2024 target of 74% represents a 5% increase over 2019 levels. 2026 target of 76% represents an even greater increase to reflect MassDOT's goal of improving reliability. Setting the non-interstate travel time reliability targets involved both aiming for improvement over the prior targets while also assessing the accuracy of the current trend line. The trend line for non-interstate travel time reliability showed small improvements prior to the pandemic, increasing from 80.1% in 2017 to 82.8% in 2019. As with other reliability data, non-interstate reliability was high in 2020 and 2021 due to lower VMT. At the time, the targets were set in fall of 2022. The year-to-date 2022 figure showed 89%, which was an improvement over the 2021 figure of 87.9%. However, MassDOT felt that the year-to-date 2022 figure at the time of target setting may have been a little too optimistic since non-interstate reliability can be particularly unpredictable. As such, a conservative approach was used to set targets that were slightly lower than the trend line, but were still higher than the prior target of 80%. This was the logic behind the 2-year target of 85% and the 4-year target of 87%. This slide shows the trend line for truck travel time reliability, or TTTR. Unlike the previous 2 reliability metrics, which show the percentage of road miles that are reliable, TTTR is shown just as an index, comparing the 95th percentile travel time just of trucks carrying freight to the 50th percentile travel time of trucks. Since a lower number indicates less variability in travel time, the direction we want the trend line for this measure to go is down. With regard to the trend line, you can see that there's a bit of variation prior to the pandemic between 2017 and 2019, with some improvement in TTTR between 2018 and 2019. However, since the pandemic, 2021 and 2022 data show that TTTR is worsening slightly, going up to 1.61 in 2021 and 1.64 in 2022. As such, to set targets in this area, MassDOT sought to show improvement over the prior target of 1.85 and set a 2024 target of 1.80 and a 2026 target of 1.75. These targets still aim to improve upon the last target set while also being achievable given the current trend line.
I think this is where I'll pick up. Thanks, Raisa. Appreciate it. So the next set of measures I'll show are related to congestion. Raisa just presented on travel time reliability, which are reported statewide. The next two measures are called peak hour excessive delay and non-single occupancy vehicle travel, which are reported at the urbanized area level, still under the same regulations to the Federal Highway Administration. And sort of get at this idea of trying to measure how congested the roadways are and how much we might want to limit single occupancy vehicle travel to improve that congestion. So the first measure in this area is peak hour excessive delay. We measure that at peak periods between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. This is all per the federal regulations on how to measure this particular area. And it's defined, delay in this context is defined as whether the travel speed is at 20 miles per hour or at 60% of the posted speed limit travel time. So, 60% of 55 miles an hour would be 33 miles an hour. So if it's if the travel time is 33 miles an hour on a 55 mile an hour speed limit, that would be considered delay. Excessive delay under this measure. So we report this for the Boston urbanized area, as well as the Worcester and Springfield urbanized area as well. We submitted our targets on December 16th, and similarly, all of the MPOs that are in each urbanized area, the Old Colony region being within sort of having communities that are also within the Boston urbanized area, since the MPO boundaries and UZA boundaries don't cross perfectly. I think the MPO is still subject to sort of reviewing and adopting these targets. So that's why we're presenting these in addition to the other ones that Bill and Raisa touched on. So you can go to the next slide. I know this is a lot of text and information, but I just want to, this is mostly for reference if folks are interested in how this actually gets calculated, but I just want to call your attention to the text that's in red. The way to interpret this is the annual hours per person that people spend in traffic. Essentially, it's that per year that people would spend in delay or traffic on roadways in the urbanized area. So in 2018, that just consider that the average person spent 22.87 hours in traffic or in excessive delay at 20 miles an hour, or 60% of the speed limit, whichever was greater that year. That increased in 2019 to 25 hours of excessive delay. And then, of course, 2020, as Raisa mentioned with the reliability metrics too, we saw a drop in congestion, drop in vehicles on the roads. And so obviously that cut that congestion amount of time people were spending in traffic in half, down to 12 hours. Saw a slight uptick in 2021. So if folks are interested, the other information is here on these slides, just in case folks wanted to sort of know what goes into that calculation. So of course make available for afterwards, but for now, that's the important thing to remember. So you can go to the next slide. So for the 2024 and 2026 targets, the past targets that we set were for 2020 and 2022, and now we're required to adopt 2-year and 4-year targets again for 2024 and 2026. And we're using a similar approach to what we did for the reliability targets, using past years of data to project a trend line, set a target based on that, and omit the outlier years of pandemic related travel. So you can go to the next slide. So this is what we see when we project out the trends of peak hour excessive delay. So those same numbers was showing previously. You can see the uptick and then the drop, but continuing to go up. You know, given the return to traffic generally in the region and elsewhere, we are kind of at pre-pandemic levels again, although, you know, traffic is spread out a little more across the day as opposed to being confined to peak periods. Nonetheless, I think we're still seeing congestion return and seeing some increase in traffic. So for the purposes of this reporting exercise, we are projecting, you know, an increase in congestion and setting targets that account for that increase while also hoping to reduce congestion relative to what we set in the past. So the last target we set was 18.31, but given some of the trends that we're seeing and there were some past data issues on this topic as well. And so we're setting targets for the 2024, the 2-year target at 24 and the 2026 target at 22 hours. So, you know, just given the increases that we're seeing, we are setting those targets, and this one was subject to there was a change in methodology, I believe, which is why the 24 target is actually higher than the 22 target. But now that we have, I think, the correct data and we're using the same methodology, we're, you know, obviously we have a goal to reduce congestion. We don't want to see it go up. And so the difference between 2024 and 2026 is supposed to reflect that goal that, you know, although we're seeing increases and we want to make the target achievable given trends, we obviously want to reduce congestion in the long run and set the targets that way to account for that. You can go to the next slide. This is just showing the same kind of data in a table format. And it's also showing that we did meet the 2022 target for the Boston UZA just because of how low travel sort of traffic volumes were. You go to the next slide. So these next 3 slides are just included because we wanted to note that for the region specific data, we have this data all at the statewide and urbanized area level. Obviously stakeholders in the region are, you know, interested, I'm sure, in region specific data. Our current contract for this is called RIDIS, which we only have data for on the statewide and kind of urbanized area level, but we're working with them to get region specific data. So right now we only have 2% of roadways, like their national highway system and interstate roadways, which is relevant for statewide reporting and reporting at the UZA, but we will have more granular information that I think would be of interest to folks in the future. So you can go to the next slide. I'm just gonna move through these really quick. This is just showing the region specific data for the Boston urbanized area. This is the reliability metric. So in the Boston urbanized area, the Boston MPO region, that was 71.4. You can go to the next slide. This is showing the truck travel time reliability just for the Boston MPO region. And we can produce similar charts for this for the Old Colony region. I apologize for not having these updated. You could just skip this one and the next one, please. You can skip that. And it's available for reference if folks are interested, but it's more specific to the Boston. We'll have more information at the MPO level shortly. But this next area is for non-single occupant vehicle travel, which is the final, the final congestion measure that we are required to report on based on the percentage of people commuting to work using a mode other than a single occupancy vehicle, also set at the urbanized area level. You can go to the next slide. So this is how the data actually looks, what we use to set this measure. So if you see that line that says drove alone, we're looking at the inverse of that number is what we want to look at and increase. So we want to, of course, reduce that number to encourage other modes. So you can go to the next slide. So the inverse of driving alone is what's shown here. So if you took that number and subtracted it from 1, you could see there is an increase in non-SOV travel, which is going in the right direction. And so on the historical trend line that we see between kind of 2010 and 2020, of course, in the 2016 to 2020 period, there was a huge increase in working from home, which increased this greater than in prior years. But based on this trend line, we've set the 2-year target of 38.77% and the 4-year target of 39.81%. You can go to the next slide. And this is just to show that we did use data that was accounting for potential increase in remote working, especially in the Boston urbanized area. This is a screenshot from a recent telework study that MassDOT is supporting, just showing that in the future, if you see the, a look at sort of potential increase in telework rates, 35% being kind of teleworking part-time, which is of course much greater than it was pre-pandemic. And so we're just accounting for that as we go forward. So go to the next slide. This is the final measure, which it's included here because it's required at the federal level for us to look at, but it's a very specific measure on emissions reduction. Of course, increasing non-SOV travel will lead to reduction in emissions, as will reducing congestion. But this particular performance measure looks at reducing emissions specifically from projects that are in what are known as air quality maintenance areas or non-attainment areas, none of which are in the Old Colony region. We only have 5 in Massachusetts. Those are in Waltham, Lowell, Worcester, Springfield, and Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard. And the measure requires that we only look at projects that are funded with congestion mitigation and air quality improvement funds for projects in those communities. So go to the next slide. It's very specific, and we only have 2 projects that meet those criteria. And here they are. The Newton project is the only one we have quantified emissions reductions for. So that was the target that was set for that measure. But again, this one, I think we can all agree that emissions reduction is an important goal, but just given how specific this is in the regulations for the purposes of reporting, we don't, this is what we're required to show to the Federal Highway Administration and what we, have reported, but not super relevant here. You could go to the next slide. So this is just a summary of the targets that the MPO will be asked to vote on at their meeting later this month. But this just puts all the targets in one place, just available for reference in case folks are interested in a summary. But I think that should be the last slide, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Derek?
Nope, not this time.
Thank you very much. And any questions for Reza? Thank you very much for presenting your information. Anyone want to add any comments? Oh, hearing none. Thank you both very much.
Great, thank you.
We're going to move on to item B, which is development of the FFY 2024 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program and the development schedule, and that would be Bill.
Yes, ma'am. So make this fairly quick. The development of our the next tip, the 2024 to 2028, is ramping up. So the next month, we'll be meeting with MassDOT. What's called tip readiness days. So we'll be looking at all the projects, the state that they're in, how likely they are to advance where they currently are in the existing tip, or if they have to be moved back, or we may be moved up if something's at 100% and another project's maybe not ready to go. Sometimes projects can jostle around like that. But we'll be also looking at to fill out that 2028 component, which would be the latest, the 5th year in the tip. So if you recall, so typically in March, we'll come to this committee with a preferred, not preferred, but we'll come to this committee with potential scenarios. Last year, there were 2 scenarios that presented, and through this committee and through MPO, ultimately a preferred set of projects is determined. So that would be taking place in March. We'd look for a preferred set of projects, preferred scenario in March. Then that would go out to a public review and comment period, and then potential final endorsement of his tip in later this year. So that's where we're at right now. So we're working with MassDOT, working with project components, and looking at all these projects. So it's it's on schedule. It has to be. But it is, and so we're moving forward. So if anyone has any questions or additional comments.
If you want to move on to item C, Bill, which is the Old Colony 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan, and that would be the development update.
Yes, ma'am. So they just like the tip, the LRTP developments moving forward. Right now, several things are happening. So we're looking to schedule some public engagement events. So those would be a variety of methods to engage the public. We'll certainly be having at least one webinar, possibly 2. We may possibly have an open house. We have looking to have information tables at the Bat Intermodal Center to physically engage with passengers there. We're scheduling a focus group meeting to look at mobility challenges through 2050. So this will be a cooperative effort between us, MassDOT, and Brockton Area Transit. We're currently contacting and engaging individual stakeholders to solicit their input, discuss their needs and priorities going through 2050. We're reviewing socioeconomic projection estimates through 2050. So that'd be household population and jobs and forecasts or estimates, I should say. And that's a little bit behind schedule. We had hoped to have that last summer. Looks like right now a draft set of figures is being reviewed, and hope to have a final set in April. So it's later than we wanted, but it is what it is. But nonetheless, so those numbers will be in the plan, and they're a necessary data set for developing a travel demand model. So that's happening. And our staff is currently surveying pavement conditions across the region. This is necessary to determine the current state of the infrastructure and funding scenarios that will be needed to bring the system up to certain states of good repair. So that's basically what's happening right now. If anyone has any specific questions, happy to answer them. This plan is roughly the same schedule as the tip. Little probably might be a month later than we hope to have the tip endorsed, but it wouldn't be later this spring or very early summer. But more towards the goal is more towards the end of spring with a endorsed LRTP, and the goal is to have a draft one released for review in April or May. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Bill. What's going on? That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Any comments or questions for Bill on this? I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this as we go along.
Yeah, this will be
Right.
monthly update. So
ongoing, right? Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
going to move on to item 8, which is other business. And under item A, community local technical assistance studies, and that is you again, Bill.
Yes, ma'am. So just one main update. We did complete a project for the town of East Bridgewater. That was a traffic study for Central Street, looking at truck traffic specifically on that roadway and doing an analysis of potential heavy commercial vehicle exclusions. So we sent along our data, findings, and guidance to the town. And any additional assistance that the town needs with that, we're happy to provide. But at this point, that project is completed. And you can see in your staff report, at Town Duxbury, we're working with them to do a traffic study at 2 intersections on Route 3A. That'd be Route 3A at Oak Street and Parks Avenue, and then Route 3A at Elm Street and Soul Avenue. Then next slide. And then we'll be, the town of Kingston has asked us to do a road safety audit, a follow-up to a road safety audit we did in 2010 for Landing Road. So this is quite some time has passed on this. So we're happy to provide an update. So that'll be scheduled this spring. With that, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to item B, which is the staff reviews on ENFs, EIRs, and MPCs. And that would be you, Kyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
You can go to the next slide. Yep. So we have a few new projects. First up is in the town of Bridgewater. I've reported on this project a few times, the Lakeshore Center Phase 4. It's under the MIPA because it's going to require a state permit and it exceeds one or more MIPA review thresholds. The ENF was filed on May 16th, 2022, and on June 24th is when the secretary certificate was issued requiring a draft EIR. Next in Brockton, the Ellis Brett Pond Dam repairs. This is going to be the removal of brush, stumps, and root systems from within 20 feet of the dam. Unstable portions of the dike will be regraded. Regrading of the embankment at the dam and associated dike to have a uniform crest with a downstream and upstream slope. Provided vegetated articulated concrete block matting, restored gravel access drive along the dike to uniform elevation, and then finally grass area downgrading of the wetland flags will be restored with a mowable native wetland or conservation seed mix. And then the final new project for Plymouth, the Doyle Aquaculture. This proposed licensed site, it's located in the waters of Plymouth within the Duxbury Bay shellfish growing area. And the applicant proposes to deploy bottom gear to culture oysters and potentially other shellfish. And getting into public notices, there's a bunch of them here. The first one, Easton, notice of issuance of section 61 finding. This is for the Owl Ridge Estate project. A conservation and management plan has been prepared in consultation with the NHESP. Next project, public notice in Halifax, notice of application and issuance of a draft groundwater discharge permit. This authorizes discharges to the ground from the on-site wastewater treatment facility located at Walmart at 295 Plymouth Street in Halifax. The next public notice is for multiple towns in the region. It's for submission of a yearly operation plan. National Grid, they'll be conducting selective herbicide treatments along rights of way as part of an integrated vegetation management program on transmission and distribution lines. Next is in the town of Stoughton, notice of intent to initiate an aquatic plan management program. The proposed project is seeking approval to implement an aquatic plant management program at Glen Echo Pond. Next, in the town of Plymouth, notice of issuance of draft Water Management Act permits. Mass DEP, they've issued a draft renewed Water Management Act permit for a 30-day public comment period to the town of Plymouth in the Buzzards Bay Basin. Next, in the town of Hanover, notice of application and issuance of a draft groundwater discharge permit. This permit is for the discharge of treated wastewater from Cardinal Cushing Centers at 4 or 5 Washington Street. And this public notice starts the 30-day public comment period, and that was on December 7th when that came out. Next is Halifax, notice of scope of work for hydrogeological evaluation. Scope of work is proposed for a soil absorption system to be located at 265 Monpont Street. And that was it. So that concludes my MEPA report.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Any comments or questions for Kyle at this time? I don't see any hands or anything.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Item C, which is your regional concerns and local community transportation issues. And this is open for anyone who has a question. All right, does anyone have any comments to add or something they would like to ask Sully at this time?
Noreen, I guess some people are coming up looking to speak on some issues. One, I think, was Charlie, and I see it on my screen.
Okay. Floor is open. Charlie?
Well, it looks like John Fay had asked about the bridge over Salisbury Brook in Brockton at Summer and Grove Street
Okay.
in the chat, and we just replied back that the city has that intersection and bridge under design, and the designer is CDM Smith, and it's programmed in federal 2025.
Okay, great. And I know earlier, I think Shane O'Brien, Bridgewater Planner, had a question. I don't know if it was answered on staff reports.
Yeah, I was just looking, I know there's made some references to the staff reports. I just haven't, is there a location on the website or a link to where they are?
Yeah, so the staff reports are actually on our new website, oldcolonyplanning.org. And if you go to the, there's a get involved drop down across the top, and it should say like MPO, Joint Transportation Committee, et cetera. And if you go into those sub pages, it should have the agenda, minutes, and staff reports.
All right, yeah, sorry, I was just going to the old one.
Yeah, that's we have the next generation website, and we'll be sunsetting that old one pretty soon.
You know me, I'm old school.
Actually, I did have a question for Kyle and Shane's. It's with regard to the Lakeshore, I still call it Lakeshore Corporate Center, Phase 4. What are they actually proposing to do that requires the permit, or is it another
A
lane?
lot.
Yeah.
A lot that zoning doesn't allow. Another hotel, condos, 55 plus, Lakeshore restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an interesting look at my potential busy schedule in the future.
Yeah. Sounds like a full-time job in itself.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, it's I think just step one of many steps that involves council action and planning board meetings. So look for those on our agendas in the future.
And Becky Coletti had a really good question. She was wondering if the survey was available to the public. And I think Sean answered that question and said it was, but that's a good thing to know, that people can just go on and fill out that survey.
Yeah.
2050.
Yeah, so if you're on the JTC mailing list, I'm gonna be sending out that the flyer for that survey and a link that that you can take, and you can also forward to people in your own communities. We certainly encourage you to, and hopefully to get as much of a robust response as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe we also put it in our OCPC news weekly newsletter as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Bill and Sean. Thank you, all of the OCPC staff. Another great job filling us in on information. Appreciate that. And Dan, did you have anything to add at this time?
Charlie has his hand raised.
Ah, see, I can't see it. Okay, Charlie, go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to take a moment on behalf of Old Colony Planning Council to recognize and congratulate Shane O'Brien for taking and passing the American Institute of Certified Planners
Yes.
exam this past fall. So
Congratulations,
Shane.
Shane.
It's quite an accomplishment.
Congrats.
Congratulations, Shane.
Congrats.
Thanks. I'm not gonna
Congratulations.
rename myself. You can all see it on LinkedIn whenever I send you an email. So
Yeah,
Hey,
great
thank
job.
you. Thanks, everyone.
awesome.
All right, any other comments or questions? Thank you all for attending and Happy New Year. Great new year ahead of us to 2023. And do I have an emotion for adjournment?
Motion.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you so much, and we will see you next month.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.